This is NBC Palm Springs.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Sarah Sanchez. A lot to get to tonight, but first, we're taking a live look at Hurricane Laura. This is in Lafayette, Louisiana. You can see a lot of rain there. Trees are shaking. There were some other impressive shots, but unfortunately, that live shot went down just moments ago. Lafayette is just west of New Orleans, in between New Orleans and Lake Charles. Now, Lake Charles completely evacuated. Actually, the local TV station in Lake Charles has evacuated, and they're reporting live from a studio in Baton Rouge. They left. Now, the storm is a Cat 4 hurricane at this hour. The hurricane eyewall is now moving onshore over Louisiana. Hurricane Laura is only a few hours away from landfall, but there are still many people who have stayed behind in Louisiana despite mandatory evacuation orders. Mike, now we're going to send it over to you, but the National Hurricane Center is calling the storm surge unsurvivable. Have you ever heard that term used before when you've covered hurricanes?
Absolutely not. No, this is new territory. This is going to be a historic hurricane. Just to add that onto the pile of things that 2020 has brought us so far this year, this is a major Category 4 storm. We've talked about this a couple times already this week. A 3, 4, and a 5 are all considered major category storms. This is a solid 4, got close to 5. In fact, sustained winds have been sitting at 150 miles an hour. This is infrared, so this is a satellite image. As we take a look at radar right now, this is a textbook hurricane. A couple things I want to point out here is that this is a perfectly formed eye wall. It's not normal to see your eye wall hole up to itself while it's making landfall, and that's literally what it's doing. This is a 3-hour loop, so I backed it up to about 9 o'clock tonight. So just like Sarah was saying, this has already made landfall. This is a live look right now. This is not futurecast, and to see that eye still holding together as it's approaching land there is really unusual. Those sustained winds right in that red band right there are 150 miles an hour. This is catastrophic. And just going back to what Sarah was talking about, storm surge, a 9-foot storm surge will level a neighborhood. When we're talking about a 20-foot storm surge, this is not only catastrophic, but it's going to go way inland. So here's the latest update from the National Hurricane Center. Laura was holding on to 150 sustained. So again, 9 miles an hour more would have made it a Cat 5. Gusts up to 173, moving west-northwest about 15 miles an hour. So if there's any good news, is that this system is moving. If it was stationary, that would be really, really rough. It will continue to make its way further inland. In fact, it's going to do a couple things. It's going to take out the power for a massive swath. About 500,000 people will be affected by this. And having lived through these before, it takes a while for that power to come back on again, about a week. Here's what we're looking at as far as rainfall potential, anywhere from about 4 to 12 inches near shore there. And then this is going to deliver widespread rain all the way up the Mississippi River Valley, hook a hard right, and then head out towards the northeast. In about 120 hours, it'll be out in the Atlantic. We got some issues of our own here. Excessive heat warning will be in place until 10 o'clock tomorrow night. We broke some records here locally today. We're going to talk about that, and I got a really good looking weekend for you coming up.
Thank you, Mike. And closer to home, fire crews are still fighting a massive group of wildfires burning in the Central Valley and Bay Area. Thousands of homes are threatened by the SCU Lightning Complex fire tonight. But across the state, nearly 1,300 homes or other buildings have been destroyed. In the SCU fire burning near Santa Cruz, crews are getting an upper hand as weather cooperates. And more homes have been evacuated in Northern California as the LNU fire grows. Riverside County officials are under the microscope over how $36 million in taxpayer money was spent. A pricey consulting firm was hired to help find ways to cut costs. But a Riverside County civil grand jury finds it may not have been a smart investment after all. Olivia Sandusky has more.
I think that's where it largely failed.
Riverside County supervisors discussed the $36.4 million spent on consulting services from KPMG. The goal was to save money, but a report by the civil grand jury says it only provided limited savings.
I think it's incumbent upon us as supervisors that, quite frankly, spent quite a bit of money to perform. And there's, I'm sure, areas there in which we can improve.
The county's executive office says KPMG's suggestions led to $100 million saved between the sheriff's and district attorney's office. However, the jury says that claim lacks validation.
I'm not surprised that they couldn't be validated because the way that the KPMG study came out was supposed to be this, kind of massive transformation. It never happened. The county wasn't willing to implement those changes. We wasted millions of dollars to get information that was already here, readily available.
The report also found examples of major losses, like the $8 million spent on a software package that was canceled for unknown reasons.
That motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
On Tuesday, supervisors approved the formation of a committee to respond to the jury's findings.
What are we going to do to make sure that we implement the recommendations in order for us to achieve what the initial goal was, which was cost savings?
And the group will present their own report before November 10th.
We need to assure the taxpayers that this was a good investment. And if it wasn't, let's fess up to it.
Olivia Sandusky, NBC Palm Springs.
Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia holds a press conference to support the first statewide suicide prevention bill. The bill would establish a dedicated suicide prevention office focusing on how to get people connected to resources. Garcia, along with other assembly members across the state, is urging Governor Newsom to support the bill. The Imperial Irrigation District says customers have until October 15th to apply for unclaimed funds owed to them. IID officials say the district has accumulated some customers' money because of bad checks or overpayments. Any unclaimed dollars will become the property of IID on October 16th.
Coronavirus coverage brought to you by East Valley COVID-19 testing site, serving residents of eastern Coachella Valley.
A new report suggests that 6-foot social distancing rule might not be enough to stop the spread of COVID-19. Scientists with MIT and Oxford say 6 feet is based on outdated science because the virus can travel as far as 26 feet. They now say 6 feet should just be a starting point. New research shows the effectiveness of different masks from preventing the spread of coronavirus. Japanese scientists studied how coronavirus droplets spread, and a simulation shows coughing while wearing a cotton mask reduced the spread of droplets by about 70%. A non-woven mask was 80% effective. Dr. Anthony Fauci says he had nothing to do with new CDC recommendations. The nation's top infectious disease doctor was apparently having throat surgery when the agency made a new decision. Fauci says he's worried about the newest update, saying, quote, "It will give people the incorrect assumption that asymptomatic spread is not of great concern." As people have stayed home during the pandemic and cleaned and organized, Angelvue Resale shops have been overwhelmed with donations. Pallets upon pallets of donations are piling up at a fulfillment center in Desert Hot Springs. Our Nico Payne has more on what the nonprofit is doing with all that merchandise.
If you've been driving down Dillon Road, you've probably seen these pallets stacked about 10 feet high. They're filled with donations of clothes, toys, appliances, and furniture from all across the valley.
Everybody was sheltering at home, so they started cleaning out their closets. And so at that point in time, we got inundated with donations.
Angelvue is a nonprofit organization. The funds they get from selling the donated clothes and furniture goes to fund programs who serve both children and adults with disabilities. Since the pandemic began, they've seen an increase in donations, the likes of which they've never experienced before, and they're simply overwhelmed.
We've never, ever had goods sitting outside. We're working about 150 of the pallets that are outside each day, bringing them in here, producing them, and then sending them back out to the stores.
But Donna says all donations are still welcome and nothing will go to waste.
We absolutely don't want our donations to slow down. We're a donated goods retailer, so we live on donations. That's the lifeblood of our operation.
Due to the pandemic, the donation process is a little bit different.
Everybody drops at the stores still. The stores put it in containers, it's shrink wrapped and shipped out here to the clearance center.
The donations are then put in a quarantine before being put out on store floors.
Even though the likelihood of getting COVID from a donated good is small, we're taking the extra steps of making sure that we're quarantining that merchandise for 72 hours before it goes out on the sales floor.
Nico Payne, NBC Palm Springs.
As we head to break, we're going to take a look at video of downtown Los Angeles. Protesters marched in the streets tonight, angry over the police shooting of Jacob Blake in Wisconsin. When we come back, we'll take you to Kenosha, where just last night 2 people died when a teenager started shooting at a crowd of protesters. We'll show you the scene in Kenosha tonight. Plus a follow-up on the story of 7-year-old Gavin Ludwig. He was brutally attacked at random just weeks ago in Desert Hot Springs. Our Kitty Alvarado has an update from little Gavin himself. We have plenty of more news for you coming up, so stay with us. After multiple nights of unrest in Kenosha after the shooting death of Jacob Blake, a peaceful night in Wisconsin. Small group of protesters gathered late tonight in the town center where 2 people were shot and killed just last night. A curfew went into effect at 7 tonight. Now today, investigators identified the officer who shot Jacob Blake 7 times, but he's not facing charges. This video is not from tonight. This was from last night. But last night, a 17-year-old was arrested after killing 2 people during a 3rd night of protests in Kenosha over Blake's shooting. So the 4th night, though, peaceful, thankfully. The Republican National Convention wraps up its 3rd night with Vice President Mike Pence in the spotlight. The theme, Land of Heroes, is highlighting frontline workers and focusing on law and order. Some speakers painted a bleak picture of America's future if President Trump isn't reelected. Alice Barr is at the White House with details.
In a setting rich with patriotic symbolism, Vice President Mike Pence officially accepting his party's nomination. Baltimore's Fort McHenry hosting night 3 of the Republican National Convention.
The site of the very battle that inspired the words of our national anthem. Those words have inspired this land of heroes in every generation since.
I pledge allegiance to the
Tonight, a salute to the brave, honoring frontline workers and military veterans. President Trump joining the vice president, framing this election as a perilous fight for our country's future. Some of the addresses focusing on national security.
President Trump will keep America safe. President Trump will keep America prosperous. President Trump will keep America, America.
Many zeroing in on security at home with a law and order pro-police message as protests ramp up again after the police shooting of a black man in Wisconsin.
From Seattle and Portland to Washington and New York, Democrat-run cities across this country are being overrun by violent mobs.
Speakers starkly warning of America's future under a Joe Biden administration.
An America where farmers are punished, jobs are destroyed, and taxes crush the middle class.
And appealing directly to black voters.
I know what racism looks like. I've seen it firsthand. In America, it has no resemblance to President Trump.
Republicans making their case for President Trump as the man to lead the land of the free. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
When we come back, Mike has a look at the forecast. Lots to talk about, Mike.
Yeah, there is lots to talk about. We had the hurricane. We'll give you some more details on that. But right here at home, we broke a record again today. Hang in there. It gets a lot better this weekend. I'll show you the numbers when we come back. Welcome back, bringing you back with another gorgeous live look, courtesy of our Walter Clark 111 cam. Okay, it was hot. We broke a record today. I mentioned that already a couple of times. I'll show you the numbers in a moment. Already so much better than last week, though, and last weekend when we had those dew points running in the 60s and 70s, minimum humidity at about 40%. I think it's safe to say that we have already crested. I think that we've seen the worst, knock wood, that summer is going to give us. Now it's just all about shorter days and trying to get those numbers down. We're going to do that this weekend. We'll take a look at that in a moment. Just want to show you a contrast. This is the latest. I got that radar loop still going, that eye wall still perfectly intact as this Category 4 Hurricane Laura makes landfall. That's Lake Charles, Louisiana. Just to give you a little bit of context, that's Houston. Look at that. They're getting some wind and rain out of the deal, but at least they're not taking a Cat 4 on the nose. And then there's Lafayette, so Baton Rouge, that would put New Orleans right about there. Again, if there's anything to be grateful for, this is not a heavily populated area, but I mentioned earlier about 500,000 million people in the path of that very dangerous storm. Make sure you check with Jerry in the morning. He'll have some updates for you. We had our own issues today, 118. You know what? I've gotten to the point now where whenever we break a record, I don't even really know what to say. We've done it several times this summer. We beat the old number by 2 degrees today. 105 is the 30-year average for this time of year. 83 in the overnight, 77, so 6 degrees above average. But again, at least it's not 90 like it was last week. Finding silver linings wherever we can right now. Excessive heat warning in place for about another 24 hours, 23 hours and 40 minutes. But who's counting? That will expire tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Heat advisory will remain in place for the Inland Empire until Friday at 10 p.m. because their temperatures are going to stay well above 100. Some folks there, especially in Riverside, will get up to about 106. And while we're playing, excessive heat warning will stretch into the Imperial Valley as well. Here's what we're doing right now, right on the money, 100 degrees. But for the second night in a row, getting this glorious north-northwest wind coming in sustained about 15 to 20, gusts at about 25 and 30. That's ventilation. And again, that's what we were not getting last week. Humidity bouncing back up to 20%. We got ourselves down to 9 today. That was a very respectable number. Take a look at Futurecast. The good-ish news about Laura is once she moves on shore, boom, becomes a post-tropical low. Delivers the goods, though. It's going to rain hard in Arkansas, Missouri, and then hook that hard right across Indiana, Kentucky, Virginia, even out towards Delaware. They're getting ready for some tropical rain. We got nothing going on here. In fact, we don't even have any monsoonal flow, and that's wonderful. Look at the big picture. Sure easy to see that thing from space. 86 in the Yucca Valley, 101 in Coachella, 61 in Big Bear, 67 in Ottawa. That sounds so good. Sustained winds sitting in those teens. They will back off overnight. We're going to do the whole thing again tomorrow. We start in the mid-80s. We warm into the 1-teens, 114 Palm Springs, 115 India, 104 Joshua Tree, and 80 up in Big Bear. Your Comfort Air 7-day forecast is filled with nothing but good news. Look at that weekend. Saturday 108, Sunday 106, and both nights touching down into the 70s. Yeah, that's good stuff.
We have an update tonight on 7-year-old Gavin Ludwig. Gavin suffered a brain injury after being brutally attacked by a neighbor as he walked home. Our Kitty Alvarado has been following this story and has more.
This is 7-year-old Gavin Ludwig a little over a month ago in a coma on a ventilator, recovering from a brutal attack. And this is him now.
There he goes.
He's out of the hospital where he was recovering from a massive brain injury after being attacked by a neighbor as he walked home from a pool party in Desert Hot Springs. Gavin gave us his own update from the rehab facility where he stays full-time.
I'm doing good.
He has so much energy, everyone is having a hard time keeping up.
That's my Gavin. My Gavin is full of energy.
Gavin's mom, Wendy, is amazed at his progress.
Every day there's been a little miracle with him and his improvements. It's just awesome.
And so are doctors.
Originally, they just kept telling me they didn't know. They wouldn't give me any promises or any prognosis because they weren't sure. But now he's blowing them all away with how good he's doing.
Gavin's left arm and leg are still affected, but gaining strength, and he's scheduled for surgery to put a plate where his skull was shattered. That surgery will be repeated as he grows, but his speech is great. Just listen to his big plans for this birdhouse.
I'm gonna put the baby bird and the baby sparrow.
Gavin and Wendy have a message for those who've been there in their time of need.
Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Out of all the darkness that started this, there's been so much light.
She's grateful she can finally see the little boy she remembers.
He's coming back 100%. Bye. Blow me a kiss.
Kitty Alvarado, NBC Palm Springs.
We have a look at sports and we come back. Stay with us.
You'll blurt something out. Welcome back. Time now for a look at your NBC Palm Springs sports or lack of sports headlines. In light of the shooting of Jacob Blake, today's scheduled NBA playoff games have been postponed. Shortly before tip-off of the first game between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Orlando Magic, news broke that the Bucks would boycott the game. Bucks players and coaches never even took the court. The Bucks are, of course, from the state of Wisconsin. The NBA then made announcements that none of tonight's games would be played and they will all be rescheduled. Reports say a meeting will take place tonight among all NBA players to talk about their game plan going forward. The Bucks also made a statement before leaving the arena, and here's a portion of it.
The past 4 months have shed a light on the ongoing racial injustices facing our African American communities.
When we take the court and represent Milwaukee and Wisconsin, we are expected to play at a high level, give maximum effort, and hold each other accountable.
Despite the overwhelming plea for change, there has been no action. So our focus today cannot be on basketball.
We are calling for justice for Jacob Blake and demand the officers be held accountable.
Major League Baseball games are also being canceled too. The game between the Brewers and the Reds was the first to be canceled. The Brewers, of course, are also from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The Mariners-Padres game has also been canceled, and tonight's Dodgers-Giants game was also canceled. Some individual players, including the Chicago Cubs' Jason Hayward, are choosing to sit out while their teams play as well. Some Major League Soccer teams are also choosing not to play, joining the MLB and NBA in the fight for racial justice. Atlanta United, Colorado Rapids, and FC Dallas all postponed play in solidarity. Atlanta United issued the following statement, quote, "We stand in solidarity with the black community and our players, our city, and our fans." Another big name that joins the sports world in solidarity for Jacob Blake is Naomi Osaka. Osaka says she will not play in Thursday's Western and Southern Open semifinal match. Tournament organizers took action by pausing the rest of today's matches and tomorrow's. Games will resume on Friday. That's going to do it for your lack of sports. We'll be right back.
What? Rocco, you just hit a hole in one.
That's 4-year-old Rocco. He's been practicing golf since he was 3. So for like what, a year? 4 and 3, okay. He couldn't believe he hit the hole in one, so he ran down to get a closer look. Rocco's family is just thrilled golf is an activity father and son can enjoy together. Apparently he's really good. The name like Rocco, I mean, we're going to be seeing more of this kid. I'm just saying.
I'm just so happy for him.
So supportive. It's so nice.
Sarah, I've been golfing
for a year, like
for
Rocco?
More than a year.
And
I've never hit a hole in one.
Wow.
I mean, I've come so close. I've come so close so many times.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And so the little guy hits it, and then when his dad tells him he hit a hole in one, it doesn't even register.
He doesn't even know what that is. He
So
has no idea what that is.
So that happens every day. So I could score an 18 theoretically? Like.
Yeah, right. Lucky kid. All right, so we're going to take a look real quick at Hurricane Laura. This is a live look from Lafayette, Louisiana. This shot isn't as impressive as some of the other ones we're seeing because, quite frankly, it's dangerous. It's really hard for them to hold a camera. So Laura is going to be the big story tomorrow. That's for sure. This storm expected to just wreak havoc across the South.
And of course, Jerry Stephan will have all the updates for you in the morning. Sarah, like a couple things about this. Like we talk about the winds. Of course, that's how the Saffir-Simpson scale is all about wind, categories 1 through 5 based on wind. But it's really the storm surge that always does the most damage and of course kills people. And we were seeing interviews earlier tonight on NBC Nightly News with people doing that classic, I'm not leaving. You know, I've taken 2 category 3 storms on the head. And of course, you know, that's I was probably about 50 miles away from where the eye wall made landfall. I was in a concrete building and the building was rocking back and forth at the height of it. I mean, it's possibly one of the most terrifying experiences that I've ever had in my entire life. And I swore that I would never do it again. I was really curious to experience it, kind of like an earthquake, you know. It's like if you've never experienced one before and then you find that you go, okay, you know.
And then you're like, never again.
And then never again, you know. And
and you know, adding to the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic and it's just 2020 is just a really bad year, and I'm sure that a lot of these people are just really exasperated from all of it.
Oh, absolutely. So, getting folks into the shelters, but having to take COVID tests beforehand.
Poor
Thoughts
those people.
prayers.
We really hope, really just for the best right now. Hopefully, not a lot of destruction, not a lot of deaths. We can only hope and pray. Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow.
Caught you knocking at my cellar